At 5:30, Ruth Reichl's restaurant reviews and epicurean insights have been savored by her fans for some 50 years now.
The trailblazing food writer first made a name for herself working at the Los Angeles Times before taking her expertise east to the New York Times and then as editor-in-chief of Gourmet magazine. CBS 4's Lisa Petrillo sat down with the legendary food critic to talk about her new book called Save Me the Plums.
And people would say to me, I read you religiously.
A conversation with food critic legend Ruth Reichl at Books and Books at Bal Harbour shops, both publicly for an audience filled with her fans and privately for our cameras to talk with Reichl about her new book, Save Me the Plums, My Gourmet Memoir. Her career began when this self-described Berkeley hippie was writing fun food stories in a local paper and then was plucked by the Los Angeles Times to be their food critic.
The LA Times came and said, "We want you to be our restaurant critic." And I mean, I thought, they're crazy. I don't have any journalism background. I've never learned any professional kind of cooking, and now I'm going to be the biggest voice west of the Mississippi. And I loved it. I mean, it was the greatest job.
A few years later, she was handpicked to be the food critic for the New York Times. On the airplane heading there, she met a woman and immediately realized her life had changed.
She said, "No, I know you're about to be the restaurant critic of the New York Times, and there's a huge picture of you in the restaurant I work in. And there's this big sign with wanted written across the bottom, and there's $1,000 for anybody who spots you in the restaurant." And I suddenly thought, okay, this is different than anything I've experienced before.
From then on, she was a critic in disguise.
Wigs, clothing, I mean, all my characters had complete backstories. They had their own jewelry. Some of them wore makeup, some of them didn't. I had old ladies. I had a very soignée blonde like you. They really didn't know when I went in.
And for the time she had to write those negative reviews?
You always want to write positive reviews. I mean, you want to tell people about great places that they're going to love, but your responsibility is to tell the truth.
In 1999, Ruth was plucked to be editor-in-chief of the Creme de la Creme Gourmet magazine.
I mean, the first thing that they did, actually, when I got there with my wild, frizzy hair, the head of PR of Condé Nast took the PR person who was assigned to me aside and said, "Make her do something about her hair. Show her how to use makeup. Get her some clothes." And suddenly I am, I'm like Cinderella in this.
Stylish editor-in-chief.
Well, I don't know that I was ever quite up to their standards. I mean, Anna Wintour always looked at me a little askance in the elevator.
Save Me the Plums also documents after 10 years at Gourmet magazine, Ruth and her staff were given only 2 days' notice before it was shut down for good. But her love for food still runs strong.
If you had told me when I started out that Americans would suddenly come to care passionately about food, I would have danced for joy, and I feel like I'm dancing for joy all the time.
Lisa Petrillo, CBS 4 News.